There is a little black stove in the corner of a snug cabin, and the man kneeling in front of it has his hands held out flat to the heat, the way you would warm them at a campfire. It is good and dark in the room, the kind of dark that comes early in the mountains in winter, and up above him, climbing the wall toward the ceiling, the stovepipe is glowing, a dull, sullen red, like the last coal in a fire that won't quite die. He thinks that red means good heat. He is wrong. That red is the stove telling him it is in trouble, and he cannot read it, because nobody ever taught him the language. My name is Silas Crane. I'm a hillman. My people have worked this hollow since before the power lines ever came up the mountain, and I have heated this same cabin with one wood stove for 40 winters. I know the song a stovepipe sings when it is happy, and I know the one it sings just before something goes wrong. And the part that ought to make you a little angry is this. The catalog house and the online seller who shipped that man his pretty little stove in a flat brown box, they knew he didn't know. They sold him the iron and the romance of it, and not one honest page about how to set it in a room without cooking himself out or burning the place down. Stay with me. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what those sellers leave out. The one mistake that has folks throwing open a window in the dead of January, and the few things between you and a house fire that are not optional and never were. None of it is hidden. It just was never in anybody's interest to tell you plain, so I will. But before any of that, a word of caution, because this is one of those subjects where being careless does not cost you a few dollars. It costs you the house, and sometimes more than the house. Wood heat done wrong burns homes down, and it kills people quiet, in their sleep. With carbon monoxide you cannot smell or see. So everything I tell you today, you set up by the clearances printed on your own stove's listing and by your local code, not by my say-so, not by a video. You put a carbon monoxide alarm in that room and you keep a battery in it. You have that chimney looked at and swept by somebody who does it for a living. And if any part of the install leaves you unsure, you get a real pro to check it before you ever light the first fire. This is how I do it on my own place, passed down and learned the hard way. It is not a substitute for a professional. Now, let me start with what most folks get wrong, because it is the whole game and almost everybody gets it exactly backwards. Here is the thing. Nobody selling these little stoves will say out loud, bigger is not better. In a small space, bigger is the mistake that ruins the whole experience. A man buys a cabin, or one of those tiny houses everybody's chasing now, and he goes shopping for a stove, and his eye lands on the biggest, handsomest cast iron thing he can afford. He figures more iron means more warm, and warm is what he's after. So he hauls home a stove built to heat 1,000 square feet and bolts it into a room of 200. And then January comes, and you know what that man is doing on the coldest night of the year? He is cracking a window, sitting in his little house with the snow blowing sideways outside and the window open, because the stove he bought is so much too big for the room that he cannot build even a small fire in it without baking himself out onto the porch. He is burning good firewood and throwing the heat straight out the gap in the sash. That is the single most common mistake there is. And the seller knew the size of the stove and never once asked the size of the room. He didn't need to know. He needed to ship the box. Let me sit you down with the why of it, because the why is older than any of us, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. A wood stove is not like a thermostat on the wall where you dial up the number you want and the machine chases it. A stove gives you the heat, the fire gives it, and a fire in a firebox built for a big room wants to be a big fire. Choke it down small to keep from roasting yourself, and you get the worst of both worlds. A smoldering, sulky, low fire that never burns clean, that coats your chimney with creosote because it's smoking instead of flaming, and that still throws more heat than your little room can shed. The man ends up with a dirty chimney and an open window at the same time, and he blames the stove, and the stove was never the problem. The size was. The fit was. That's the part the pretty web page leaves in the dark. My granddaddy was a was a man named Burley Adkins, and he set the stove in this very cabin when he was a young man, and he taught me a thing about iron and fire that I have never found written better anywhere. He said, a stove is not a thing you command. It is a thing you keep company with. You learn its temper, you learn what it wants, and you give it a fire the right size for the room, not the biggest fire your pride can build. Burley had a saying. He said a stove too big for its house is like a big dog in a small kitchen. It isn't bad, it's just wrong placed, and somebody's going to get knocked over. He sized this stove to this cabin to keep it warm through the long winters, and it has never once driven me to the window. That is what a right-sized stove does. It loafs along at a comfortable burn all day, clean and steady, and it leaves you be. So the first thing the sellers won't tell you, buy small for a small space. A stove rated for the square footage you actually have, run at a steady, easy fire, will outdo a monster you're forced to starve every single time. You can find the heating area rating right on the listing for any decent stove. They print it, the square footage it's built to warm. Match it honest to your room. And here's a hillman's word on it, if anything, size a touch under, not over, for a small, tight space, because a little stove run bright and clean will surprise you with how far its heat carries. Don't let a salesman or a slick web page talk you up a size. Buy the room you've got. Now, the Flatlanders, and I mean no disrespect by it, it's just a different way of living. The Flatlander tends to think the way to be warm is to overpower the cold. More furnace, more iron, more everything, and let the thermostats sort it out. Up here in the hollow, we learned the opposite, because we had to. We learned that warmth is a thing you fit to the room, not a thing you blast at it. A small stove, well set, in a well-kept room, is a quieter and a steadier warm than any oversized thing roaring and choked and smoking up its own flue. The mountain teaches you to match the tool to the work. There is no machine to hide behind up here, and there never was. You get it right, or you get cold, and that has a way of making a man pay attention. Let me give you a couple things that don't work, because honesty is the whole reason you're still listening, and I'd rather tell you the truth than sell you a feeling. First one, that red glowing stovepipe I opened with the one that man thought meant good heat? Folks will tell you a cherry red pipe is just a stove really putting out, really earning its keep. I have heard it my whole life from men who ought to know better. It is wrong and it is dangerous. When your stovepipe glows red, that is not good heat, that is an overfire. The fire is burning far hotter than the stove and the pipe were ever built to take. Single-walled pipe can warp, the seams can pull, and worst of all, a roaring overfire is exactly the kind of thing that can light off the creosote built up in your chimney and give you a chimney fire. And a chimney fire is not a small thing. It is a fire roaring up inside the flue at a heat that can crack masonry and get into the framing of your house through the very wall the chimney runs in. So if you ever see your pipe going red, that is not a thing to admire. That is the stove hollering at you. Cut your air down, get that fire back under control, and then sit down and figure out why it got away from you in the first place. Too much air, too much dry kindling at once, a damper left wide. A healthy stovepipe runs hot to the hand held near it but never glowing, never lit up in the dark, never glowing. Write that one down and tape it to the wall by the stove. Now hold on, because the next part is the one most folks get backwards, and it is the part the seller is most likely to skip entirely. The clearances, the empty space between your hot iron and anything that can burn. This is not decoration, it is not a suggestion, and it is the one place where I am going to be plainer than I usually am. You do not get to be clever about clearances. Every stove sold in this country comes with a listing, a label, a manual that tells you exactly how far that stove has to sit from a combustible wall and exactly how far the pipe has to clear the ceiling and any wood. Those numbers were figured by testing, by people whose whole job was to set a stove on fire and watch what the wall behind it did. They are not the same for every stove, and that is the trap. Because a man hears one number from a neighbor and a different number off the internet, and he splits the difference and feels reasonable about it. Don't split the difference. Use the number on your stove's own listing. That number, or more, never less. The neighbor's stove is not your stove. And here is what that means in plain mountain terms. Behind a wood stove, and underneath it, you want non-combustible material standing between the iron and the structure of your house. On the wall, A proper heat shield and a real shield is mounted out away from the wall with an air gap behind it so the heat can wash up and out the back instead of soaking into the wall. A board nailed flat against the logs is not a shield. That just gives the heat one more thing to cook. The shield with the gap behind it, set off the wall on spacers, is the thing that actually lets a stove sit closer to a wall safely, and even then you follow the listing's reduced number, not your hope. On the floor, a hearth pad, stone, brick, tile over a proper backer board, something that does not burn, and that catches the stray ember when you open that door, and a coal will roll out the door, sooner or later. I promise you it will. It'll roll out the morning you're half awake with your coffee and not looking, and the pad is what stands between a rolling coal and your floorboards. Burley set this stove on a slab of creekstone he hauled up himself, a foot out past the door in every direction, and there is a sheet of metal behind it standing off the logs a good inch on little spacers, and in 40 winters I have not scorched a log in that wall nor charred a board on that floor. That is not luck. That is clearances, done the way the old men did them, and the way the listing tells you to, which, for once in this world, are the very same thing. I'll be honest with you about something I got wrong for years, because I'd rather you learn it off my mistake than off your own. When I was younger and thought I knew the stove better than the book, I ran single-wall pipe up close to a rafter, closer than I should have, and I told myself the pipe wasn't that hot way up there, and it'd be fine. And for a few winters it was fine. And then one cold snap I built her up a little hot one night to take the bite off, and I happened to go up in that crawl space the next morning for something else entirely, and I put my hand on that rafter near the pipe, and it was hot. Not warm, hot, dry, baked, the wood gone, the color of an old biscuit. I had been slow cooking the framing of my own house for 3 winters and calling it fine, because nothing had happened yet. And that's the lie a man tells himself. Nothing happening yet is not the same as safe. It is just luck that hasn't run out. That's the whole lesson, and it cost me nothing to learn but a cold sweat, which is cheaper than what it could have cost. I tore that pipe out, and I put in double-wall pipe, the kind built with an airspace inside the wall of it, so the outside surface stays far cooler than single wall ever will, and I gave it the clearance the maker called for, and I have slept easier every winter since. So if your pipe has to run anywhere near wood, double wall is not me trying to sell you something fancier. It is the thing that lets the pipe pass closer to combustibles than single wall ever safely can, because its outside doesn't run near as hot. Read your pipe's listing for the number it allows. Always the number, never the hope. Let me stop here a moment, because there's a piece that has nothing to do with fire you can see, and it's the one that scares me most of all. Carbon monoxide, a wood stove, burning, is making gases, and those gases are supposed to go up the chimney and out into the sky over your roof. The whole arrangement only works if the chimney draws, if it pulls that smoke up and away with a good steady draft. And here is the trouble the seller of a cheap little stove will never breathe a word of. If your chimney is too short, or it's choked half shut with creosote, or the house is sealed up so tight in winter that there's no fresh air slipping in to feed the fire, that stove can stop drawing the way it should, and when it stops drawing right, it can spill its gases back down into the room instead of sending them up the flue. We even have a name for the worst of it backdraft, where the chimney runs the wrong way and pours the smoke at you. Now smoke you can see and smell, and that'll send you to a window, but carbon monoxide rides along in there with no smell, no color, no taste. It does not make you cough. It does not wake you. It makes you sleepy, and then it makes you gone. And a great many of the folks it has taken never knew a thing was wrong. That is why I told you at the very top, and I'll tell you again, because it is the cheapest insurance a body can buy. A carbon monoxide alarm in the room with the stove, with a live battery, tested, a few dollars at any hardware store against your whole family asleep down the hall. That is not a hard sum to work. 2 more things the cheap stove seller leaves out, and then I'll hand you the whole of it back. Simple. The first is the steel itself. The very cheapest little stoves, and you can spot one, it's light when a stove ought to be heavy. The metal thin as a cookie sheet, they will warp and burn through faster than you'd believe. Thin steel can't take the heat cycle. screaming hot, then dead cold, then screaming hot again, night after night, winter on winter. That punishment finds the thin spot and opens it up, and once a stove warps, you've got gaps where you don't want them, and a fire you can't control near as well. A stove with thick plate or good, honest cast iron costs more up front and is still keeping a room warm long after the thin one's gone to the scrap pile. That's not me telling you to spend big for the sake of spending. It's me telling you what you're actually buying when the price looks too good to be true. Too good to be true is generally exactly that. And the other thing is, the chimney has to be tall enough to draw. There's an old rule the chimney men go by, and it's a sound one. Your flue ought to clear the roof and stand a good ways above the roof line near it, so the draft pulls clean and steady no matter which way the wind sets. A stub of a pipe poking just barely over the shingles will smoke back on you in a gust, draw lazy, and build creosote faster than a tall, true chimney ever would. And that, you'll notice, walks you right back into both troubles I already named. A poor drawing chimney is the road to chimney fire and to carbon monoxide both, because a fire that can't breathe out smolders, and a smolder cakes the flue and spills its gas. A chimney that draws right is half of safe wood heat, maybe more than half. And the man shipping you a box of iron in the mail is not thinking 1 minute about your roof line or which way your wind blows. He can't. So you have to... Now here's the honest other side of all that, because I won't leave you scared and I won't leave you thinking a body like you can't do this, folks. Have heated with wood up these mountains since long before there was ever a code book to read or an alarm to buy, and they did it well, and they did it old, by keeping company with the stove the way Burley taught me. It comes down to a handful of plain things. Run a hot, clean, bright fire, not a slow, smoldering smother, because that smolder is the very thing that cakes your chimney with creosote and starts you down the bad road. Burn dry, seasoned wood, split and stacked under cover the better part of a year, never green and wet and hissing. Give the fire its air. Keep the pipe and the chimney swept and looked at every season by a man who does it for a living. Size the stove honest to the room. Set it on stone with a shielded wall behind it at the clearance the listing calls for, and not an inch less. Put the alarm on the wall and check it. Do that, and a wood stove will warm you honest and safe for the rest of your days, the way this one's warmed me for 40 winters and warmed Burley before me. The expensive mistake is buying big and setting it careless. The cheap right way is buying small and setting it by the book. That's the whole game, and there was never any more to it than that the sellers just found it didn't pay to say so. Next time, I'm going to show you the trick my granny used to keep a single banked fire alive all the night through, so you wake to a warm cabin and a bed of live coals instead of a cold black box, and a fire to build from scratch in the dark with cold hands. It's the natural next step after today, and it's a thing the old folks knew in their bones that hardly a soul alive now has ever heard. Until then, stay warm, stay watchful, and remember, the folks who settled these mountains with their bare hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.